The stars were cold and endless, stretched like a black ocean filled with silver dust. The alien scout ship Irith moved quietly through the darkness, its smooth, curved hull gliding between distant suns. Inside, the crew spoke in low voices, each one watching their screens for signs of danger. Captain Vareth sat in the command chair, his 4 long fingers tapping against the metal armrest. His green eyes moved slowly across the display screens. The patrol route was supposed to be empty. No ships, no signals, no surprises. But deep space was never truly empty. The sensor officer, a young alien named Selra, suddenly froze. Her eyes widened, and her frilled ears twitched in alarm. "Captain," she whispered, "there's something ahead." Vreth leaned forward. "Show me." The main screen shifted, and in the center of the void appeared a shape, long, sharp-edged, and completely still. It was a ship, but unlike any they had seen before. Its black hull swallowed the light around it, and strange markings ran across its surface like scars. Selra's voice shook. "It's human." The room went silent. Even the quiet hum of the engines seemed to fade. The crew glanced at one. Another, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone knew the old stories about human warships, stories that were never confirmed, but never denied either. Vreth's voice was calm. "Distance? 20,000 clicks. It's drifting. No engine heat, no signals. It looks dead." The captain narrowed his eyes. "Or it wants us to think it's dead." No one spoke. The alien race Virith belonged to had fought humans centuries ago. The war ended without explanation. No victory, no peace treaty, just silence. Since then, few had ever seen a human warship up close, and those who did rarely returned. The navigation officer, a broad-shouldered alien named Corlan, spoke softly. "Captain, the old rule says—" "I know the rule," Vareth interrupted. His voice was sharp, but his expression stayed unreadable. "Never scan a human warship. I know." "But why?" Selra asked, her young voice trembling. "It's just an abandoned ship, isn't it? If we scan, we could learn things. Human technology, human weapons. That could help our people." Corlan gave her a hard look. "And if the stories are true, if their ships can feel it when we scan them, if they wake up?" Vreth stood, walking slowly toward the main screen. The human battleship filled the view now, its massive bulk blocking out the stars behind it. The markings along its hull seemed to twist and change when you stared too long, almost like they were alive. The captain's voice was low. "What is its designation?" Selra squinted at the readings. "The letters are strange. Old Earth. Script. I can't translate all of it, but the last word is wrath." Corlan shifted uneasily. A fitting name. The wrath drifted in complete silence, but something about it felt wrong. It wasn't the silence of an empty ship. It was the silence of something holding its breath. Vreth turned to his crew. "Prepare the scan." The officers froze. Even Selra hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yes. If this ship is truly dead, it poses no danger. If it is alive—" He paused, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Then I want to know what it is capable of." The science console lit up as Selra began entering the commands. Outside, invisible waves of energy started to form, ready to wash over the human vessel. Corlan muttered under his breath. "This is a mistake." The scan beam reached toward the wrath, stretching across the blackness of space like a ghostly thread. It touched the battleship's hull, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the lights on the Irith flickered. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. The power readings dipped for less than a second, then returned to normal. Selra frowned. "Strange. The ship's hull absorbed part of the scan. It's like It drank it. Vreth's eyes narrowed. Continue. The readings began to pour in, but they made no sense. The battleship was giving back impossible numbers, energy levels beyond the limits of physics, internal structures that shifted between scans, and a heat signature that pulsed like a heartbeat. Selra's voice cracked. Captain, these readings, it's like the ship is alive. Before anyone could respond, the markings on the battleship's hull began to move. Slowly, they twisted into new shapes, not random patterns, but symbols. And the crew realized with a chill that they were words. Corlan read them aloud in a whisper. Leave now. No radio transmission, no sound. The message simply appeared on the surface of the ship, glowing faintly in the void. The crew looked to their captain. Vreth didn't speak. His gaze stayed locked on the human battleship, as if trying to read the thoughts of something far older and far more dangerous than any of them could understand. Selra swallowed. Captain, what are your orders? Vreth slowly turned to her. Increase scan resolution. The crew stared at him in disbelief. The scan powered up again. Outside, the Wrath remained still, but the space around it seemed heavier, as if gravity itself bent toward the ship. The shadows in the command room grew longer. Selra's hands trembled over the controls. She activated the deeper scan. 4, 1 heartbeat. Everything was normal. Then every display screen on the Irith went black. The crew gasped. The only light came from the stars outside, and then slowly the screens flickered back on. But instead of normal sensor data, each screen now showed a different image. Human eyes, dozens of them staring directly at the crew. Selra's voice was barely a whisper. Captain, they're looking at us. Vreth said nothing. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice stayed calm. Maintain position. The Wrath still did not move, but somehow Vreth knew. It was awake now, and it knew exactly who they were. Outside, the hull markings shifted again. This time the words were different. We warned you. The temperature in the command room dropped. The crew sat frozen, waiting for something to happen, for the cannons to fire, for the engines to roar to life. But nothing came. And that, somehow, was worse. Vreth looked at the human battleship one last time before speaking. Continue. The scan! Corlan turned toward him, shock on his face. Sir! But the captain's voice was steady. We've already crossed the line. Now we see how far the humans will let us go. Outside, the Wrath waited in silence. And then, deep within its dark hull, something began to move. The deep scan reached into the human battleship like invisible fingers searching through shadows. Lines of strange data poured into the Irith's computers, flashing across Selra's screen faster than she could read. At first, she thought, the scan had failed. The numbers made no sense, shifting every second, changing shape, even disappearing before the system could save them. Some readings showed the battleship as a hollow shell, completely empty. Others showed a maze of shifting rooms and corridors that did not follow any logical design. Captain, Selra said slowly, this isn't possible. The ship is changing. Vreth leaned over her station. The symbols on the screen were not from any known language, yet somehow they looked deliberate. Not random noise, almost like a message. Corlan glanced at his own console and frowned. Our scanners can't read it. The data is rewriting itself. Even our computers are confused. Selra's voice trembled. It's almost like the ship is scanning us back. Vreth didn't answer, but the thought settled heavily in his mind. The readings continued, stranger with each second. Energy spikes appeared deep inside the battleship, power levels far above anything their scanners had ever measured. Then, for a heartbeat, the readings showed movement. Something inside was active. Selra froze. Life signs, but not human, I don't know what this is. Corlan shook his head. Could be drones, could be traps. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the command room flickered again. This time, a low hum filled the air, not coming from their own engines, but from somewhere outside. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The hum grew louder, vibrating in their chests. Selra's hands shook as she tried to stop the scan. It's not responding. The system won't let me shut it down. On the main screen, the Wrath stayed perfectly still, but the symbols on its hull began to shift again. The shapes twisted into a pattern none of them recognized, and then the crew realized something chilling. The shapes were appearing on their screens too, flashing across every display in the room. Corlan narrowed his eyes. It's sending us code, but it's not in any database. Vareth studied the symbols. His instincts told him they were more than code. They were like thoughts, captured and shaped into writing. Selra swallowed hard. Captain, if this is a message, I think it's for you. The last of the symbols froze on the screen. Slowly, the ship's translator tried to make sense of them. When the translation appeared, the words were simple. Stop looking. A silence, heavier than any before, filled the room. Corlan leaned closer to the captain. Sir, I think it knows exactly what we're doing, and I think it doesn't want us to finish. Vareth stared at the words, his expression unreadable. Or, he said softly, it doesn't want us to see what comes next. Outside, the Wrath floated in the dark, quiet and unmoving, but now every single member of the crew could feel it. They weren't alone in that ship, and whatever was inside didn't want to be found. The words "stop looking" still glowed on the main screen, cold and sharp against the darkness. No one moved. No one spoke. The crew of the Irith simply stared, as if hoping the message would vanish if they waited long. Enough! Selra's voice finally broke the silence, small and unsure. Captain, what do we do? Virith didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the human battleship. We wait, he said at last. They waited, but the Wrath didn't move. It just floated there, a black shape against the endless stars. Yet the longer they looked at it, the heavier the air seemed to become. The crew felt it pressing on them, like deep water crushing a diver. Corlan spoke quietly, as if afraid the ship could hear him. I knew a captain once, years ago. He and his crew found a human warship in the Edge systems. They tried to scan it. Weeks later, their ship drifted back into our territory. No one was alive. The ship's computers were burned out from the inside, like something had erased them. The doctors said the crew's brains looked the same way. Selra shivered. You think this ship could do that to us? Corlan didn't look at her. I think it already could have. Before Vareth could reply, the lights flickered a third time. But this time, the power didn't return right away. The command room went completely dark, leaving only the dim glow of the main screen. And that's when it appeared. A single line of text slid across the screen, written in an old alien language that hadn't been used in centuries. Selra gasped. Captain, that's not human language. That's ours. Vreth stepped closer. The message was short. Just 2 words. Go home. The letters stayed for only a moment before melting away into static. The crew sat frozen. It wasn't just the meaning of the message. It was the fact that the Wrath knew their language. Not just their modern speech, but an ancient form that even most scholars couldn't read without help. Vreth's mind turned over the implications. The humans didn't just know about their people. They knew their past. Selra's hands hovered over the controls. Captain, we should leave. This is wrong. but Vareth's gaze stayed locked on the dark shape of the human ship. "No, not yet. It's telling us to go. That means there's something it doesn't want us to find." Corlan exhaled, slowly. "Or it means it's giving us one last chance before it decides we're not worth warning again." Outside, the Wrath remained silent, but the darkness around it felt different now. As if something was awake inside, listening, waiting. The Irith's crew didn't know it yet, but this was the first and last warning the human battleship would give them. The words, "Go home," still echoed in the minds of the Irith's crew long after they faded from the screen. No one wanted to be the first to speak. The silence in the command room felt heavy, as if sound itself was afraid to exist here. Finally, Selra broke it. "Captain, we have our answer. This ship is dangerous. It doesn't want us here. That should be enough." Corlan nodded firmly. "She's right. Even if the stories are exaggerated, the Wrath is not empty. We're too close. We're one wrong move from becoming one of those ghost stories ourselves." Vreth stood at the center of the room, hands clasped behind his back. His voice was calm but carried a weight that silenced everyone. "You're both correct. The ship is dangerous. It is not empty. And that is exactly why we must continue." Selra turned toward him, eyes wide. "Why? What could be worth this risk?" The captain's gaze never left the black silhouette of the battleship outside. "Because our people have always feared humans. We've told stories about them for centuries. But fear makes us weak. We need to know if those stories are truth or just shadows in the mind." Corlan frowned. "And if they're true?" Vareth's lips tightened into a thin line. "Then at least we'll die knowing the shape of the thing we feared." The crew shifted uncomfortably. Selra's hands trembled as she looked between her captain and the deadly ship outside. "Sir, with respect, this isn't bravery. This is walking into the jaws of something that already knows we're here." Vreth finally turned to face her. His voice softened, almost kind. "Every hunter knows that sometimes you must step closer to the beast to learn how it kills. Otherwise, you will never know how to survive it." The science console beeped softly, a reminder that the deeper scan was still running in the background. Selra hesitated, then asked, "Do you want me to continue collecting data?" "Yes," Vreth said. "Push the scan deeper. Focus on internal power sources and whatever is moving inside." Corlan muttered something under his breath, but obeyed when the captain ordered him to adjust the ship's position. Slowly, the Irith drifted closer to the Wrath. The view on the main screen shifted, the human battleship growing larger until it filled the frame. Its black hull reflected no light. The strange markings along its surface seemed to twist more quickly now, as if reacting to their approach. Selra's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's watching us," Corlan replied. "Ships don't watch." But deep down, neither of them believed that anymore. Outside, the Wrath remained still, but a faint red glow pulsed from somewhere deep within its hull. It wasn't a steady light. It pulsed slowly, like the heartbeat of some massive creature. Vreth's eyes narrowed. "There, focus the scan on that." Selra adjusted the settings. The hum of the scanners grew louder, filling the room. Numbers and readings began pouring onto the displays again, changing faster than she could track. Corlan leaned closer to his own console. "Captain, we're reading energy levels higher than anything we've ever recorded, and they're rising." Selra's voice cracked. "It knows we're looking at its core." Vreth didn't answer. His gaze stayed locked on the main screen, on that slow, steady pulse of red deep inside the Wrath. The pulse quickened. The hum of the scanners filled the command room, low and steady like the growl of a distant predator. The red pulse at the center of the Wrath quickened, glowing brighter with each beat. On the Irith, the crew sat tense, eyes fixed on their screens. Then it happened. Selra jerked back from her console, eyes wide. Her breathing quickened. "Selra?" Vreth's voice was sharp. She swallowed hard. "Sir? I just heard something." Corlan glanced at her. "The comms are silent." "It wasn't the comms," she said, her voice shaking. "It was... in my head." The room went still. "What did you hear?" Vreth asked. Selra's gaze shifted toward the battleship on the screen. "A voice. A human voice. It said, 'I see you.'" Corlan snorted, but the sound was forced. "You imagined it. The stress is—" "I'm not imagining it," Selra cut him off, her voice rising. "It was clear. It felt like it was standing right behind me." Before anyone could respond, Corlan froze. His eyes went distant, unfocused. "Corlan?" Vreth stepped closer. The big alien spoke slowly, his voice low. "It's in my head, too." Vreth scanned the room. 2 more crew members sat rigid in their chairs, staring at nothing. Their mouths moved silently, as if answering someone only they could hear. Then Vreth heard it. It wasn't a sound. It didn't come through his ears. It was a presence, sliding into his mind like cold water seeping under a door. And then, words, slow, deliberate. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was deep, human, and carried the weight of something ancient. Vreth clenched his jaw, forcing himself to speak aloud. "Identify yourself." For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the voice returned, closer this time. "We remember you." A cold shiver ran through Vreth's spine. "What does that mean?" he demanded. The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it pushed something into his mind. A series of images so sudden and vivid that he staggered back a step. He saw ships burning in the void, worlds in flames, alien fleets shattered like glass, and always at the center of the destruction, human warships, silent, relentless, unstoppable. The images vanished as quickly as they came, leaving Vreth's heart pounding. Around him the crew stirred, each one pale and shaken. Selra clutched her head. "Captain, it's showing me things. Battles. Death. So much death." Corlan's voice was tight. "This is not just a ship. It's something else." Vreth steadied himself and looked at the wrath on the screen. The red pulse inside it was now steady, bright, like an open eye staring at them. The voice returned, one last time. "Leave now, or join them." The screens flickered violently, data streams collapsing into static. The hum of the scanners died, and the command room fell silent again. But no one moved. No one spoke. They all knew. Whatever was inside the wrath had just let them see a fraction of its memory. And it was not a warning born from kindness. The crew of the Irith sat frozen, the echo of the human voice still lingering in their minds. The red glow within the wrath pulsed slowly, as if it was considering them, deciding what to do next. Vreth's eyes stayed locked on the main screen. "Status of our systems?" Selra checked quickly. "All normal, Captain. For now." Corlan shook his head. "It's not going to let us leave. Not after what we've done." Before Vreth could respond, the lights in the command room dimmed again, but this time it wasn't a flicker. The power dropped so suddenly that the crew felt a brief pull in their stomachs as the artificial gravity stuttered. Selra's voice rose. "Captain, we're losing sensor control." Every screen in the room went dark, except one. The main display flickered with static, then cleared to show the wrath. It hadn't moved, not an inch, yet something shimmered faintly along its hull like heat distortion. A sharp alarm blared. Corlan slammed his palm onto his console. "Incoming energy spike." Selra's eyes darted across her readings. "But there's no projectile—" She didn't get to finish. The Irith shook violently, a deep, metallic groan echoing through its hull. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't even an impact. Instead, every single sensor, camera, and scanner on the ship went dead in the same instant. Selra stared in shock. "Captain, our entire sensor array just burned out. It's like they all overheated at once." Corlane's hands moved quickly over his console. "Weapon systems, offline. Shields, offline. Engines still responding, but, Captain, it did this without firing a single visible shot." Vareth's voice was low. "It attacked only what it wanted to. It could have destroyed us, but it didn't." The crew looked at each other uneasily. The message was clear. The Wrath was showing them a fraction of its power. Just enough to remind them that their lives were being spared only because it allowed it. Then the screens came back online, all at once. No static, no distortion, just a perfect, clear view of the Wrath, still drifting in silence. Selra swallowed hard. "It's taunting us." Vreth didn't answer. His gaze stayed fixed on the battleship. If this was its first strike, he wondered what its last would look like, and deep in his mind, he suspected the Wrath was wondering the same thing. The Irith's command room felt colder now, as if the Wrath had taken more than just their sensors when it struck. The crew worked quickly, voices low, trying to bring the ship's systems back online. Corlan's hands moved over the navigation console. "Engines are still operational. Captain, we can pull back before it—" "Do it," Vareth ordered. The Irith's engines flared, pushing the ship away from the human battleship. At least that's what should have happened. Instead, the ship didn't move. Corlan frowned and tried again, adjusting thrust output. The engines roared, the vibration ran through the floor, but the stars outside stayed exactly where they were. "Captain," Corlan's voice dropped. "We're not going anywhere." Selra checked her readings. "There's no gravity field, no tractor beam, nothing on the instruments. But something is holding us here." Vreth stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the Wrath. The human battleship still floated in silence, its black hull absorbing all light. No weapons were visible, no engines burned, yet the Irith was as trapped as if it were caught in a physical cage. "Is it possible," Selra asked quietly, "that it's controlling the space around us?" Corlan shook his head. "That's impossible. Even the most advanced gravity drives can't—" Before he could finish, the Irith began to rotate slowly, its nose turning back toward the Wrath. The crew stared at their controls in disbelief. "I'm not doing this," Corlan said quickly. His hands hovered over the controls, but they were unresponsive. Selra looked up from her console, her face pale. "Captain, it's moving us. It's steering us toward it." The massive shape of the Wrath filled the main screen, growing larger with each passing second. The strange hull markings began to shift again, faster this time, until they formed a single phrase. "You wanted to look closer." Vreth stood still, hands behind his back, watching the dark hull loom ever nearer. "So be it." Selra's voice rose in fear. "Captain, it's pulling us in. We don't know what it's going to do." Vreth's eyes narrowed. "We will know soon enough." The crew sat in tense silence as the Irith drifted closer, powerless to resist. And deep in the black hull of the Wrath, the red pulse flared brighter, as if whatever lived inside was preparing for their arrival. The Irith was now so close to the Wrath that its massive hull filled nearly the entire viewing screen. No stars were visible anymore. Only the endless black armor of the human battleship, broken by strange markings that twisted and shifted, like living things. Selra's voice was tight. "Captain, we're at 100 clicks and still closing. Engines are still unresponsive." Before Vareth could reply, every console in the room flickered once, twice, then came to life, with an impossible rush of symbols, images, and numbers. Streams of data poured in from nowhere, so fast that the ship's computers began to lag. Corlan leaned forward. "Where is this coming from? Our sensors are offline." "It's not from our sensors," Selra said, her eyes wide. "It's sending it directly into our systems." The flood intensified. Symbols in a dozen alien languages flashed across the displays, including ones that hadn't been spoken in thousands of years. Some were clearly blueprints, weapons, engines, and technologies beyond anything the Irith's people had ever built. Others were images. Vreth watched as grainy footage appeared, showing massive fleets burning, alien homeworlds reduced to ash. He recognized some of the destroyed ships as belonging to species long extinct. Selra gasped as one of the images shifted. Now it showed their own fleet, familiar battle cruisers engulfed in fire. This is our future," she whispered. Corlan slammed a hand on his console. "Captain, the ship's processors are overheating. It's overloading us on purpose." Vreth's voice was calm, though his eyes stayed locked on the screen. "It wants us to see, and it wants to see what happens when we try to handle it." The data kept coming, faster and faster. The ship's cooling systems roared to life, but alarms began to blare. Selra flinched as her console sparked. "Captain, another 30 seconds of this and our core will melt down." Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the data flood stopped. Every screen went black. The command room was filled with the sound of the crew's quick, shallow breathing. Slowly, one console flickered back to life, Selra's. A single line of text appeared on it, in perfect translation. "You are not ready." Vreth's jaw tightened. "Not ready for what?" he muttered. But the wrath gave no answer. It simply drifted before them, silent again, as if it were waiting to see what they would do next. The command room smelled faintly of burned circuits, a reminder of how close the Irith had come to complete failure. Smoke still curled from one of Selra's consoles. The crew sat pale and shaken, eyes darting to the silent black shape of the Wrath outside. Corlan broke the silence first. "Captain, we can't take another hit like that. If it sends another flood, our systems, and maybe our minds, won't survive." Selra leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Sir, we should wipe the memory core now. If we erase everything we've collected, maybe it will let us go." Vreth didn't respond immediately. His gaze stayed fixed on the massive human battleship. "If we destroy the core, we lose everything we've learned, everything we came here for." Corlan's voice hardened. "If we don't, we lose everything else, including our lives." The captain slowly turned away from the screen, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. "We came here to find the truth. We've only seen fragments, shadows of its history, pieces of its strength. We don't yet understand its purpose." Selra looked at him in disbelief. "Its purpose?" "Captain, it showed us. War, destruction, extinction, that's all it knows." Vreth's voice stayed calm, but there was a dangerous edge to it. "No. That's all it wanted us to see. There's more. There has to be." Corlan stepped closer. "Sir, sometimes survival is the mission. This ship, this thing, is playing with us. You're gambling the lives of your crew for curiosity." The captain's jaw tightened. He turned back to the view of the Wrath, its dark hull unmoving, the faint red pulse inside it steady and unblinking. Finally, he spoke. "We're not leaving, not yet. Begin one final scan." Selra hesitated. "Sir, that's an order," Vreth said quietly, but with finality. Corlan muttered under his breath, but moved back to his station. The hum of the scanners began again, softer this time. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then the red pulse inside the Wrath quickened again, like a heartbeat preparing for exertion. Selra's hands shook. "Captain, I think it knows exactly what we just decided." Vreth didn't answer. In his mind, the choice had already been made. The low hum of the Irith's scanners filled the command room. Lines of data began to appear on the consoles, slowly at first, as if the ship itself were holding its breath. Corlon leaned forward, eyes darting over the readings. Strange. The scan is not bouncing back normally. It's like the space around it is shifting. Selra frowned. That's impossible. Space doesn't just... Her words cut off when the first images appeared. The Wrath's hull shimmered in the scanner's feed, and for the first time, something beyond the black armor came into view. It wasn't empty. A vast structure seemed to unfold behind the armor. Layer after layer of interlocking chambers, corridors, and weapon systems. Some looked too large to fit inside the ship's physical frame, as though the interior existed in more space than the outside did. Selra's voice dropped to a whisper. It's bigger on the inside. Corlon kept scrolling through the scan results. His eyes widened. Wait, I'm picking up other ships. Verith turned sharply. Other human ships? Corlon shook his head. No, Captain, not human. Not anyone. These ships don't match any known design, and they're moving. Selra swallowed. Moving where? Corlon's voice was tight. Around us. The room went silent. On the scanner, feed, ghostly outlines of massive vessels appeared, but the Irith's normal sensors showed nothing. The ships were like shadows, their shapes barely visible, circling slowly as if waiting for a command. Are they real? Selra asked. Vreth stared at the shifting images. If they aren't, then the illusion is more dangerous than reality. Before anyone could speak again, the data stream cut off abruptly. Every shadow ship vanished from the scanner. The Wrath loomed on the main screen once more, silent and still. But now the faint red pulse inside it was faster. Selra's voice trembled. Captain, I think it was showing us what's already here. Vreth didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the black hull. He had the feeling that the Wrath was done hiding, and that whatever happened next would decide whether they lived or died. The Irith's command room was silent except for the faint hum of the ship's systems. No one moved. The crew stared at the Wrath as if it might lunge forward at any moment. Then, without warning, every screen lit up with a deep crimson glow. No numbers, no images. Just a single pulse of red light, beating slowly in rhythm with the strange pulse inside the human ship. Selra leaned forward cautiously. Captain, it's syncing to our displays. The pulse quickened once. Then a voice, deep, calm, and impossibly clear, filled the room. It wasn't coming from the speakers. It seemed to echo inside their heads. You have looked. You have taken. Now you must choose. Corlon gripped the edge of his console. It's speaking directly to us. Selra swallowed. Choose what? The voice returned, steady and without emotion. Knowledge without return, or survival without memory. Vreth's jaw tightened. It wants us to decide. Keep what we've learned, but never go back, or erase everything and live. The crimson pulse slowed, as if waiting. Selra's voice cracked. Captain, if we keep the data, it could kill us. You saw what it did to our systems. Corlon nodded sharply. This is the same trap it set for other species. They couldn't let go of what they'd learned, and they died for it. Vreth didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the great black shape outside, his mind racing. He knew this was more than a choice between data and survival. It was a test, and the Wrath wanted to see what kind of leaders the Irith were. The voice came, one last time, lower and colder. Decide now. The crimson light on the screens flared so bright it painted every face in blood red. Vreth drew a slow breath. Helm, he said, his voice calm but firm. Prepare to... The ship shook violently before he could finish, throwing the crew against their stations. Alarms blared. Outside, the Wrath began to move for the first time. It was coming toward them. The Irith groaned under the sudden force. The forward view was filled with the dark hull of the Wrath, growing larger with each passing second. Its red pulse now throbbed like a heartbeat in a sprint, flooding the command room with an eerie glow. "Captain, it's powering something up!" Selra shouted, her hands flying over the controls. "I'm detecting... I don't even know what this is!" Corlan's voice cut in, tense and urgent. "Shields at full! Engines ready to..." Vareth raised a hand. "No! Hold position!" The crew froze, staring at him. "Sir?" Selra demanded. He stepped closer to the viewing screen, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command. "It told us to choose. If we run, it will hunt us. If we fight, it will destroy us. But if we face it..." The Wrath stopped just short of colliding. Its massive shape blocked out the stars entirely, as if space itself had been erased behind it. Then, with a low, resonating hum, a beam of red light scanned the Irith from bow to stern. The voice returned, now quieter, but somehow even more commanding. "Your decision is made." In an instant, every console on the Irith went dark. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No lights, no sound, no movement. Then, slowly, the systems came back online. The data core was empty. Every scan, every image, every shred of information about the Wrath was gone. Selra stared at her console in shock. "It wiped everything," Corlan exhaled heavily. "Then, it let us live." On the main screen, the Wrath drifted backward, its pulse slowing again. Without another word, it turned and slipped into the darkness of space, vanishing as if it had never been there. Silence filled the command room. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Vreth stood at the center, his face unreadable. "We may not remember its secrets," he said quietly. "But we know one thing. If we ever see that ship again, we won't be given a second chance." The Irith turned away from the empty blackness and set a course for home. But in the back of every crew member's mind, the same question lingered. What happens to those who choose differently?